Thank you, and welcome to tonight's event. I am recording this session as people begin to enter the room, and welcome to Becoming a Brain Warrior, Protecting What Matters. And I am Lisa Romano-Dwyer. I'm a registered social worker, and I'm also the owner of Lakeside Wellness Therapy Affiliates here in Toronto. So, welcome. Good to see some familiar faces. Hi, Ian. How are you? Oh,
Doing
no
good.
response.
Thank you.
Good, good.
Great to
You're
see
welcome.
you.
Oh, yeah, nice to see you as well. Great to see you. Thank you for sharing your time this evening because I know time is precious for everyone. So welcome. I am expecting other people to attend and I won't stop every time, I hope, but I am excited about tonight's topic. I do want to start also by saying I am recording. So if you're not comfortable with your face being shown, I do want to post it eventually on LinkedIn. So you're certainly welcome to turn off your camera, whatever you're more comfortable with. And I also wanted to say that the term brain warrior is something that I'm borrowing from Dr. Daniel Amens, who is the owner of the concept, I suppose, if you can own a concept, and several clinics in Washington and across the United States. I want to say that some of his work is controversial. He is a medical doctor, he is an MD following his name. And I believe I have sometimes read there's some neuropsychiatry that he's done some intense, just exploration in that as well. But he doesn't, when he uses the term specs in what I'll be talking about, what I'm presenting, it's not like a physical analysis of the brain. It's more brain function. So he's looking at blood flow and activity centers, which is quite interesting. So I just want to start with that proviso that it's not really something that's been researched in like the Harvard Journal of Medicine or the New England Journal of Medicine or anything like that, as far as I know. But this is a compilation, a lot of from borrowed from Dr. Daniel Dement, Amen, because of the brain warrior concept, but also a lot of the other things that I've been reading and doing for the last several years as well. Very exciting about how do we continue to age with our brain and our mind, central to everything that we do. Okay. So, what are we going to do today, this evening, on this free online time together? I just essentially wanted to do a brief introduction and welcome to becoming a brain warrior. We're going to do an overview of the brain and the mind, specifically protecting what matters in our head and our bodies. We'll have at some point an opportunity for you to engage in a personal self-assessment of your brain and mind. That's something that I did borrow from the Amen Clinic, and it's free for use. And I will share that with you at the end on the slides. I decided to put it at the very end, the final end of the slide, rather than at the beginning, so you can do it at your own leisure. And I've done it, and we can talk at later time or this evening if you want to do it. If there's not too many participants on what your score is and what it might mean for you. Number four is the daily health habits that's linked directly to brain health. And number five is a conversation on brain centric aging and longevity. So if you have any questions or you want to jump it in at any point, certainly let me know. You can raise your hand or just introduce. I can't zoom in the ID provided. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to help someone get in who I really want to be here. She's also a clinic owner. So I'm going to do that. And welcome to EC who just joined. You're welcome to turn on your camera if you like EC or not. It's really up to you. Okay. But as I told people who were joining me today, oh, I am recording it, so if you don't want your face to be shown, then please don't do that. I have someone who's having some difficulty getting in. Did anyone need a password to get into today's session?
It asked for one, but then I was able to do something different and skip that and went somewhere else, or I don't even know what I did, but I got
Got you,
in.
Ian. You got magically got in. Anyone else want to share? Because for some reason I did have my password in a notation here, and now it's disappeared, so I can't send it to her with ease.
I did not need a password. I just clicked on join and it took me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let her know that.
Yeah, you should be able to get in without any password.
And did you? Oh, here we come. Here's someone else coming in. It's asking for a meeting code, not required.
Is she
Okay.
trying to get on from the browser or through Zoom?
Through Zoom. Did you
Oh,
get it? How did you do it?
I
Through the
did through
browser?
Zoom. No, through Zoom.
Oh, yes, that's what she's doing.
Yeah.
So I don't have
Try
any.
again. If I were her, I would just retry the whole thing from the
Yes,
beginning.
yes, good point.
Okay, exit and try again.
Yep.
Thank you, folks, for teaching me. It's
I teach
perfect.
online. I teach online sometimes, so I know my students, it's the same issue. It's like just go out and come back, and they come in.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I've told her to do that again. So we'll wait and have her join us when she can. Hello, KNA. Welcome. We're just getting through the beginning of tonight's event, and thank you for spending your time with me. So we are talking about becoming a brain warrior, protecting what matters. And this is a really good example of how technology can be an affiliate for health, and can really help us when we think about things like the Calm app or the Serenity app, which is something I worked in conjunction with AI to develop for my own clients. And many of you are probably familiar with how technology can help calm the nervous system, but often technology really triggers us, like it just did momentarily, like a few minutes ago, in ways that creates momentary chaos. You know, we think we've got this, we think we got it going, and then something doesn't work exactly the way we want it to. And I know from when I was providing a lot of services to my clients during COVID, most of whom worked in software development and technology, interestingly, a high number of them were actually working in that field, and many were presenting with signs of trauma, to be very honest with you, like heightened states of anxiety and very, rapid, fast-paced thinking, and a variety of symptoms that caused me some concern around what people were experiencing and why. And so part of my motivation around why am I interested in the brain and the mind harkens back to that work through COVID with people in the field of technology, and also in my own personal and professional life, witnessing how when people age, some of the interesting new neurological conditions that have become more and more prevalent. So when we look at people over 50 and 60, we're talking about things like Parkinson's disease, ALS, Lewy body disease, and other very, significant brain disorders and diseases. And when we look at children under 10 or 5, I guess I would even go younger than 10, we can look at the increase in ASD in the number of children who've been diagnosed with autistic spectrum disorder. So we'll talk more about that. But certainly from where I sit and having been in the field as long as I have, something is happening, whether it's environmental, technological, not really sure what the cause is, but what my impression is that more and more than ever, we really want to focus on the brain and the mind as we age. And as we have this gift of longevity, which the research tells us, in terms of getting it right so that we can do everything within our power, noting that even when we're doing the best that we can, sometimes people get diseases. So according to Dr. Amen, and of course for all of us, oh good, she's joined but through her phone. Excellent. We can change our brain every day. And how do we do that? And most of you probably know this, that every thought, every behavior, every movement, everything we do engages the brain, right? So he does in his book clearly discuss the brain as something separate from the mind, which I find also quite interesting. The idea being that, of course, as the kind of motherboard of our entire personhood, the brain is involved in everything that we do. And so his view is that if we focus on the brain and think about that when we engage in simple daily practices to strengthen our mind and our memory, our moods, our energy, habits, and relationships, we actually do that. What we actually are doing by doing so, by doing simple daily practices, we're actually changing the brain. The other very fascinating thing for me in the last several years with all of the reading I've been doing on mental health and wellness is what I feel has been an alignment between things like muscle-centric aging, cardio care, what we do for our heart, what we do for our muscle groups, what we do for our mind and our brain, all seem to point to very similar daily practices. And so Dr. Amen's work kind of continues on that as well. So some of this may in fact feel a little repetitive or you've heard it before. And again, it's controversial because he uses this as treatment and when he's dealing with certain diagnoses. Of course, I don't use this information in that manner. And many of you may not even be a clinician. You're mainly as someone interested in the topic. So I would like you to begin tonight by being mindful and honest of your own age, your current lifestyle, your current health habits, whether or not you currently struggle with some sort of illness or condition, and your life commitments, whether or not you have the space and time or grace to commit to doing something differently in your life on a daily basis that we know will impact and change your brain. Okay, let me see if I can change this. All right. So what are we talking about when we talk about your brain and your mind? Can someone tell me when I move my power bar, do you see that or do I only see that? Do you see what I'm moving on the screen right now? Could someone just tell me?
No.
Okay, perfect. So I'm the only one who gets the obstacle in view. So the left diagram is actually an example of what you will see if you decide to do some reading or listen a little more to Dr. Daniel Amen. And so what he's looking at again is blood flow and brain activity. And he refers to it as a spec. So he puts in a particular dye. He takes a look at what's going on in the brain, and then he takes a picture of it. So if you look at the left side has the normal brain. The middle picture is an ADD brain before treatment, and the third picture is the ADD brain after treatment with Ritalin. So that's an example that something like you would see when we talk about brain specs. I'm not sure if anyone outside of Dr. Amen actually does that sort of taking a close look at someone's brain and their activity in the brain, but it's quite fascinating to me. Essentially, his view is that if we bring more oxygen to the brain and we oxygenate the brain, the better health, the better ability the brain will be in terms of working for you in the ways we need it to work. Because as we know, the brain is the master of all of our organs and basically orchestrates this amazing body of ours and our minds in such a very nuanced way and a miraculous way, quite frankly, such that we can, go about our day without even thinking about what's going on in our heads. So our physical brain is an organ involved in all aspects of our daily activities and controls the central nervous system. So again, the normal brain is on the left, and normal in the definition that I'm talking about today means we're getting active, the centers of your brain that ought to be active when you're jumping rope, for example, or cooking dinner or making cookies or reading a book, are activating according to the activity that you're doing. When you have a medical condition such as ADHD, Asperger's, or ASD, autism spectrum disorder, or an addiction, he talks about those conditions as well, the activity centers look a little different. So he has some evidence around that in his documents as well. So what's our mind? Our mind is made up of the thoughts, the ideas, the visualizations that occur in our heads that allow us to be aware of ourselves and aware of our environment. So sometimes the mind is taken up holistically to include things like your consciousness, or your awareness. And for those of you who are learning to calm down your nervous system, if you've been in a very highly activated or overly alarmed state for a while, due to a life event, a tragedy such as a bereavement, a relationship breakup, um, a loss of a job, or just an increase in stress, it often takes some time to remind ourselves that we actually can calm our nervous system down. And part of the ways we do that is really taking a close look at what is going on in my mind and how do I actually control or get a better attuned and more aware of the space that we call consciousness, right? The ability to take a look at what are we actually thinking and how we're thinking. So the two are different things. The brain we usually need is the physical organ. The mind is a little more abstract. We're talking about the content of the head, things that are in the head, and some might say the heart, and some might even go further and say the gut. So really like a holistic perspective of the mind is the whole person, but it's an abstract idea of the mind. And we know that when we're talking about mental health and wellness, especially when we're talking about things like anxiety, depression, and other more, familiar issues that we deal with, problems with self-esteem, looking at a problem, an old problem in a similar way that takes us down a very similar pathway of anxiety and depression, that we really need to engage the mind. Dr. Amen says something very interesting in one of the books he's written as well, and I've listened and read to several of them. He's highly published. And he does say that our minds can actually be stolen from us. The idea that, things and events can steal your mind. In other words, when we're highly preoccupied by events of our life or, people, situations, like I just mentioned, like a divorce, financial crisis, or some other stressor, that our minds kind of gets trapped into thinking a certain way because of an event. So for those of us, probably most of you, who are either dabbling or beginning to learn a little bit about mindfulness, it really aligns with that as well. So as we begin or continue to talk tonight, I should have already been still in the beginning part of today's presentation. I wanted you to be honest with yourself and rate on a scale from 1 to 10 current stress level. So if you look at the past week, the higher the number, the greater the stress you have been feeling, and jot down the number for yourself. This will be helpful for you. And you'll be able to really personalize tonight's session in a way that I hope is helpful and meaningful. So write down the number. I always say that, like, we're not going to talk about the number right now, but if we were to say something like mine was a 7, because I had a funeral this week, someone close to me passed away, but otherwise I was able to get to yoga class a couple of times this week. A 7 to me is kind of like a normative stress level for people living in our current society. If you're higher than 7, and it's okay if you are, we want to probably help you to figure out ways to bring that number down over time. So what are some of the physical symptoms of stress that you've noticed? Do you suffer with tension headaches, jaw or neck pain? Have you been increasingly forgetful? Do you find it more difficult to engage in multitasking and to engage in it well so that you're not really making a number of mistakes? If anyone wants to chime in here, you're welcome to share what your number has been this week and what are some of your common symptoms of stress, physical symptoms. If you want to share. If you don't want to share, we can carry on. I can continue.
I don't mind sharing.
Thank you, Caroline.
I did put an 8
Okay.
because I thought it.
Oh, you froze. Too bad. She was really talking to me before anyone came on without any problem, but we lost you, Caroline, for a minute. So if you can still hear us, we can no longer hear you.
So I could just speak for me. I also had an 8. for this week. Just with everything going on, it's hard to sort of separate. Um, I have relatives in the States, so
Yeah.
I hear a lot about what's going on there, and it's quite overwhelming to the point where I say I don't want to know about it anymore. Um, and
Yeah.
also just I live in a community where there's a lot of other Jewish families, and there's been attacks on synagogues, and it's a little bit worrisome, to be honest with you.
Thank you, Ian, for bringing that to our, attention here because it's important for us to understand like the bigger context that impacts us. And you're saying that you're feeling that level of
Yeah,
stress now
most
because of that.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm sorry that I mean, I think we're all in some way feeling that, at least I have been feeling that in the last 10 years, the world has sped up. It's been a very different kind of society in a different world and
very much.
very
Yes.
stressful. Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So do you get particular symptoms of stress? Like, how do you know you're at a need?
I feel anxious. It's hard for me to sort of relax. I feel the anxiety kind of run through my like, oh, I got to do this, and I get focused on that, and then I got to do this, and at the end of the day, it's like, am I coming or going?
Got you, got you. So a little like discombobulated, if I can use that word, or
Yes.
not really feeling as grounded as I might have prior to all of these anti-Jewish attacks, if I can say it in that regard. Correct me if I'm not getting the
Yeah.
language correct.
Yeah.
Anti-Semitic sentiment that is, that you said you're experiencing it locally and also in the news, and that you're really feeling that. And for other people, and I don't know, we lost Caroline, we might be talking about things like, I realize at the end of the day that I have like a stress headache around here because I've been clenching down and biting my jaw. And certainly when we think our family is at risk, we have family in the States or we have family here and we're not feeling safe, of course, we're going to have increased feelings of stress and symptoms of stress. So that's why in this slide, you see the massage therapist, because a lot of the work that I feel is required as people begin to be mindful of how alarmed, what state of alarm their body may be in. Having physical touch by a safe person, a trusted, credentialed RMT, is actually part of the therapy that I sometimes recommend for people because it helps us physically to calm down. A heat pad might help as well, or a hot water bottle, which is some of the older remedies that you might think of as our grandparents using or our parents using. But really, there is a lot of evidence to say that the ways that our nervous systems calm down needs to actually be holistic, and that's because the mind and the body is a very nuanced, interesting thing. So even I think what I heard you also say, Ian, is that you haven't been personally attacked, have you, in a synagogue? Oh, here comes Carolyn back. If you mind my asking.
No, sorry, I don't know if you heard. I have not been
Yeah.
personally attacked or
So
anything.
even though you're not personally, but hearing it and hearing about witnessing it can in and of itself, as we know as trauma providers, right?
Yes, yes.
Whether or not it's directed at me directly, like I was there and it happened to me, or I witness it, it can have a similar impact on our stress levels for sure. Caroline, you got completely cut off, so I want to bring you back in. Ian did share, but go ahead,
I am
please.
so sorry. My power went out in the house. So just reconnecting.
You
And
don't
Welcome
need to
back.
apologize for that.
Yeah, no worries. That was totally beyond your control. So no worries.
yes,
Yeah.
Welcome back. We're
yes.
glad you got your power. Are you in Toronto?
I'm in Markham.
Okay.
I'm in
Yes.
Markham. It's just the weirdest thing. Anyway, yeah. Well, my stress level is now at about, well, now it's lower, but it did
Okay.
bounce up to about a 9 when the power went out. Um, anyway, I said about an 8, and I think I don't know how much I got out, but my sleep gets impacted.
Yeah, okay. Yes, thank you. I forgot to add that as one of the little bullet points there. Definitely, yes.
Sleep is a big one for me, and food, either no appetite or too much appetite. Everything gets
Okay.
thrown off. It gets thrown off.
Yes, yes. But you know what's really excellent, Caroline, is you have a sense today of when you know that you're feeling the levels you're feeling, right? So, what Ian described is I don't feel as grounded as I would when my stress levels are high.
Yeah.
I feel less. You didn't say this, but I'm just going to kind of build
Yeah,
on that, Ian. I
right.
feel
Yeah.
maybe less in control. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. You're
But maybe
exactly
I
right.
feel less in control of
Yeah.
my thoughts. They kind of are a little more distracting. They kind of ruminate, or they're certain, or I'm having more fearful thoughts, or I'm just more feeling like my thoughts are all over the place because, there's just all of this stuff coming at me. And so that whole notion of dysregulation, I think, is what we're describing when we talk about emotional dysregulation. That's exactly what it is. It's
It
like go ahead.
it impacts um I make stupid mistakes. I
There.
make a mistake and I look at myself and I think, are you kidding? Did I just do that?
I know,
So,
I know. I can commiserate with you, Caroline. And
yeah.
I do believe that at a certain, and I'm going to say this with humility, and I hope people don't mind because I know the other people on the call are not quite over 50 yet. Not everyone's over 50, but for women in particular who once begin to be affected by menopause, and menopause is much more than just hot flashes.
Yep.
One of the things that starts to become challenged is, yeah, like I made an error on something that I really knew as well as the back of my hand. Like, how did that happen? Right. So, small little indicators of it's not a diagnostic category, but a term I use, evidence of cognitive fatigue. Like, I just can't handle all of this information and all of this sensory processing required. My brain really can't manage it all right now. Have any of you heard or thought of the notion cognitive fatigue before now?
No, but it resonates. It describes sort of the impact that happens. It's not your intelligence that gets impacted, but it is your cognitive functions, your memory. That's another thing that happens when my stress levels go up is my memory. I
Yes, the forgetfulness, right? Like I came in the room for something, but what did I come in this room for?
more than usual, which is also menopausal,
Yes,
and depression related too. So it's a triple threat when you're a female.
absolutely. Absolutely, 100%.
Well, so what's my excuse? Because
No, no,
I feel some of the same things that you guys are both articulating. Seriously?
Yes. So go ahead, Ian. So you're saying it's not really only related to menopause. It could
No.
actually also be when the body just gets to that limit, and everyone's
Yes.
limit is
Yes.
different. Everyone's limit is different. We all begin to feel the same things, right?
Very
And
much.
I think there's some truth to that too. So part of it is gendered. What we're saying is women having gone through menopause, the other side of menopause, and those who are coming up to it or having been pregnant, this idea of I have a pregnancy brain or foggy minded, that kind of idea. It's essentially kind of bringing or shedding light to or giving us permission to say hormones really do have an impact on us, right? After years of really trying to not have a lot of space to talk honestly about that. So, yes, definitely there are some differences based on gender and sex hormones. At the same time, when the body meets its limits around stress and capacity to manage emotionally, cognitively, our colleagues who are naturopathic doctors refer to it as adrenal fatigue. So many of my clients who I would characterize and they would agree as suffering burnout would, when they go see their naturopath, they're diagnosed by a naturopath as having adrenal fatigue. So similar kind of concept to cognitive fatigue.
Right.
And I liken the term cognitive fatigue, Caroline, more when I have had clients, as I described through COVID, who were in software development and working on helping everyone to migrate on a platform. And we're really presenting with activated nervous systems. And I'm thinking, what's going on with people unable to turn off the mind, unable to turn off a fast heart rate, unable to feel a sense of calm? It was like their 911, internal threat to very survival had been activated, and from the work they were doing. And I believe it was very much possibly related to this idea of just couldn't manage it anymore. Like, there is a limit to this brain of mine, or this mind of mine, if that makes sense. And so we want to pay attention to those symptoms. It doesn't mean you're breaking up and falling apart. It doesn't mean that you've blown a fuse, although it's okay if we do blow a fuse. And I say that very gently, but what I mean is it's okay to not be okay. There's a book title by that same phrase. And it's okay if we do dip into a depression or begin to meet criteria for a clinical depression as diagnosed by a medical physician or a psychiatrist or psychologist, and or anxiety disorder and or trauma. It's okay if we get there, because in my work as a clinical social worker and as a therapist and wellness coach, I've seen so many people experience what I call post-traumatic growth. Healing can happen, and we can rewire the brain, and we can heal the mind. All of those are true statements from my point of view, my practice wisdom. So now I want to turn to, so we have some sense, all of you who were brave enough to speak, and I thank you for that, about what are some of the physical impacts of stress on your body. I tend to get a lot of the upper stress is always in my upper back, so yoga has always been a good place for me to release the stress that I tend to hold up in my upper back. It's just the place that I hold it in my gastrointestinal system. I'm very affected, like you, Caroline, when you said about food. I'm also very affected with my body in my stomach area and in my digestion with stress level. So I just don't do as well if I'm under too much stress in those areas. So we really want to give ourselves permission to figure out where in our bodies do we know when we feel a certain way means, or we make a mistake that we should have not, or maybe normally we wouldn't make, as a soft little red flag that, maybe we need to rest and restore, and give ourselves permission to heal. So now I want you to think of what's top of mind for you. And so you got your stress level. Someone was at a 9 when the power went out. Then she went back to an 8. That was Caroline. I think you're at an 8, right, Ian? Other people put theirs down. I would say mine today, I would say, is maybe a 6. I'm actually lower than normal because I had even though it was an emotionally difficult day for us, because I did have a funeral today, I'm not feeling stressed. Even though I'm giving this talk, I feel like I'm in the comfort of people who want to be here. So I want you to make a list of those thoughts that are top of mind for you. And I would say top of mind and sticky thoughts. In some CBT lingo, you would know this better than maybe I do, Caroline. We have the notions of a hot thought, a mind trap, or a stuck thought, or a sticky thought. So what are some of the ruminating thoughts currently on your mind? And if you want to write those down for yourself today, that would be helpful as well. So where the brain and the dysregulation that happens when our system is flooded with adrenaline and we're having physical symptoms of stress. So, when we're activated and anxious, when we're fearful or worried, our digestion moves to, expelling, right? We don't really have time to, everything revs up. So for those of you who are feeling a higher level of anxiety, you may find that you can't keep your food down, right? Or that you have trouble digesting your food, hard to swallow that. That's very hard for me to swallow, literally and figuratively, right? It's a very difficult situation. I'm having trouble digesting what's going on for me, both literally and figuratively. And so, or the other people, some individuals suffer with having to go to the bathroom on a regular basis and find that they may even lose weight during periods of extreme stress, right? Or periods of extreme anxiety because they can't keep food down or they can't keep food in. And so that expelling mechanism is part of the body just working out the cortisol and adrenaline that's just too high, being released at a high level in your body. The same kind of idea is related to fast thoughts or ruminating thoughts or your thought traps. And I often, when in my work, can help clients identify how adrenaline plays out for them cognitively. So the C in CBT, in cognitive behavioral therapy, is your cognitions, your thoughts, and how your thoughts are connected to the chemical releases in your brain, right? And so some thoughts are actually directly connected to particular chemical releases. It's very, very fascinating to live in a time like we do now, where more and more evidence shows that where we are able to look at an old problem and understand it or come to view it in a new way, we actually are creating a new neural pathway to understanding the problem. We're creating a new neural pathway for the chemical release in your brain. Very, very powerful information. Counseling actually changes your brain and how your brain is functioning, how well it's functioning. So, years ago in the 90s or 80s, whenever it was that you were becoming a clinician, for those of us when I was learning, it wasn't nearly as definite as it is today. And we have more and more evidence. And this is physical evidence of the brain now. This is MRI evidence, not just spec evidence, to show the direct impact of clinical counseling talk-based therapy. And why is it effective? Because you're allowing yourself to work through your thoughts in a way that you can understand it differently. And when we are able to understand or even put meaning or understanding on the phenomenon that you're experiencing in a way that you can live with or feels at peace for you, then that's when I feel healing can happen. One of the other things I don't mind sharing in my talk tonight is, whether or not you call it a good thing or not, is I began to hear trauma as much as recognize it through a list of symptoms. And there is a certain sound to trauma and a certain disfluency to trauma. And when you're talking to people who are finding events somewhat traumatizing, it's very difficult for that traumatic event to be shared with people in a linear fashion and in a chronological fashion. Instead, it's choppy, it's confusing, it's tangential, it's kind of all over the place. And I always say, when people say, "Oh, Lisa, I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place," I'm saying, I'm listening to you, and it's fine. Go where your brain and your mind will take you, because it tells us where you stored the trauma in your brain and how the thoughts are connected in your brain in relation to the trauma. So there is a sound to trauma, and the more you work through what's happened to you, or your event, or the people, or the experiences that you view as traumatic, they could be work related, they could be family related, they could be world related, like Ian shared, big, little, small, whatever's going on for you, as you continue to work through it and take different perspectives about it, the more opportunities you're giving to your brain, this fascinating, in my opinion, God-made organ that will help us to find your own way forward. You actually create new neural pathways whenever you have a new idea about an old problem or a familiar problem. To me, that's so motivating, and why in part I'm doing this presentation tonight as well. So you are not stuck with the brain that you have. That's a direct quote from Dr. Amen. And again, he's basing that on his specs. We can also say the same based on other neuropsychiatric evidence that's currently available through the MRI research that I talked about, not from the same source, but in other sources, more medical sources, that have shown how we actually change brain structure and brain function with things like medication, appropriate medication and targeted medication for some individuals who are treatment resistant otherwise. I would say, in my humble experience working with people who have healed, who were highly anxious when I met them, or having extreme, having what would be consistent with a stress disorder. So again, I'm not diagnosing individuals with post-traumatic stress disorder, but certainly had shared symptoms consistent with that, and working with them over a longer period of time. And I mean really working with them, people who fully engage in doing these daily practices every day to change their brain and change their mind and change their mood and change their relationships. I can honestly tell you that they do have a different brain. They have healed. And I witnessed that. Amazing, motivating work to do. So we can all literally change our brain by what we do every day. Dr. Amen would say, being sick is the hard part. When we're not well, that's difficult. By changing our brain, by what we do every day is not so difficult. So something as simple as taking a daily walk, a 40-minute daily walk, but at a fast or moderate pace. He would say, like walking like you're late for a meeting. We know that, we knew this years ago through the New England Journal of Medicine, that a 40-minute walk every day is as powerful in mild to moderate depression as some antidepressants. I say that very gently because I'm not opposed to medication. I've seen many people experience immense improvement with medication in tandem with counseling, and sometimes not with counseling. They simply do not have the time, or their life does not give them the time to make the commitment to do something different every day that will actually help the brain. So these are some of the facts, folks. Alzheimer's is to triple in the next decade. Anxiety and depression has doubled in the past 20 years, and autistic spectrum disorder has increased by 175%. That's huge numbers, 175% from 2011 to 2022. So again, coming at this, just reading different sources and just being a human in today's world, will say something is going on that is impacting the human brain and the human mind. And I think where possible, we have to do what we know is supported by medical science and supported by health practitioners, we know makes a difference in the brain. And every little thing that we do makes a difference. Any questions or anything yet on my somewhat passionate speech? I'm very passionate about it, My father suffered from clinical depression, and so I was a child in a home where that was a reality. And today I see and believe in all of the things that we do to help us stay afloat, so that we don't slip into what we know to be clinical depression. So how do we become a brain warrior? And I like that word. And ever since I read that word from him, he had me. He had me from the concept of a brain warrior. Other people are like, they're very protective of their heart, right? Like they do everything from a cardiac perspective. And if you have anyone in your family like I do that had an early heart attack and was lucky to survive, or who didn't survive, it's motivating, right? And it helps us think about what we're a little more mindful about. Well, this family member died of this particular condition, so I want to do what I can to protect my own heart. So it's the same kind of idea, but now we're focusing on the brain and we're focusing on the mind. Many of us who've been in mental health for years, I've been close to 40 years in this field, would say for some of us, we've always been focused on the mind. But, I can honestly say through this work, through the brain warrior work with Dr. Amen, and with other similar mental health work and neuropsychiatric work, we're seeing more and more direct connection between the mind and the brain, and that holistic space that we used to talk about in very kind of alternative medicine ways, alternative medical ways, we've now come to accept that there's room for all of it and space for all of it. So my view is, and I encourage those who work with me clinically who are on tonight's call to remind yourselves that whatever works for you is good. You know, if after a really stressful day, having a hot bath works to help calm your nervous system, I want you to begin to think about that as I am protecting my brain by having this hot bath. I'm a brain warrior by helping my nervous system to calm down so that I can allow the oxygen that's going to those crisis-oriented centers of my brain, constantly sending the 911 false alarm in most cases, because we're feeling agitated and alarmed by something that likely is not a direct threat to our very survival. You know, someone just looked at me the wrong way at work, or I broke up with someone I was dating for a couple of years, or I lost $10,000 in my investments, right? Like, we want to be able to rationally take a look at, are those events real threats to our very survival, or are we interpreting that because our adrenaline is really flushing our bodies and our cortisol levels are so high, we haven't given ourselves permission to relax and calm down. So for every stressful event, we want to have a deactivating event. Every time we have a stressful event, anytime we're over a 7, or even if you're really fanatical over a 5, we want to be mindful of coming back down, right? We want to come back down to a 2 or a 3. I'm really like in a state of relaxed state. I am always saddened, but not surprised when I meet clients who tell me they forget what it feels like to be relaxed, right? They don't remember how to calm down, and they don't know what calms them down. What we work towards today in mental health work and mental health intervention is not like this constant Zen state. We're not always supposed to be an even 5. We do feel stress throughout the day, but we look for a tolerance to stress. And we call that, you know, agility, mental agility, or flexibility. So I had an event where I had a day that was a 9, or it was off the scales, man. I had a really rough day. It was like a 12, and it only goes up to 10. It was a really rough day. So do I have the capacity to come back down after that event? And we call that the flexibility. So learning what your tolerance to frustration, what your tolerance levels are also important. And Caroline, when we do those small errors, those little red flags, like, oh, I don't know how I did that. Like, I sent Lisa $50 by e-transfer, but it was supposed to be $25 or whatever the sum is. And I don't know how that happened. It was like on autopilot and I made an error. Those are often soft signs that we're not tolerating our stress levels as well as we might be deluding ourselves that we are. We want to pay attention to those soft signs. And I will tell you, when we become a more active brain warrior, those small errors become lessened. Your mood will improve. You will not dysregulate at the level you may be today. You just won't, because you are protecting your brain and you're doing what your brain needs as I said, the motherboard, to tell your body or remind your body what it needs to be calm and to turn off that stress response. So developing meaningful things that you can do on a daily basis that optimize the physical functioning of the brain, Dr. Amen refers to as the hardware of your soul. He actually talks about it as your soul, right? I don't know if I would go that deep and say that our brain is our soul, but the idea being that if the brain is working well, you can be the best you that you need to be and want to be. And so if you think of it that way, as the brain is my hardware, then what do I need to do to take care of it? Hopefully, your habits will change. Learning to manage your mind to support your happiness, inner peace, and success is the software that will run your life. That's Dr. Amen's term. So your mind in his model is your software. The brain in his model is the hardware. You get the idea about aligning this with technology. It's all good, right? In terms of the techno piece here. And planning for your entire life by honoring aging and preparing for retirement now is also a very important step. Being mindful of the fact that what I could do when I was 25 is a little different when I'm 60. And it's humbling, but true. There are limits to the body as we age, as we shared this evening. That is just a true thing, right? We, like our car or our phone, we upgrade, you know, we don't have the technology yet to upgrade the carbon matter that is our body, right? And so we want to be able to fuel the body and the mind with what Dr. Amen talks about as nutrient dense food sources and calming activities. I like to also include those because we know these are things that are actually good for the physical part of the brain and for your entire nervous system. We also want to use your brain mindfully to improve your relationships with family, friends, co-workers, and your community at large. Dr. Amen refers to this as your network connections. In my practice, I've developed something called an intuitive energy audit, where I have clients actually take a look at who in their life and what in their life either zaps their energy or it boosts their energy. And to be honest about that, because again, from a brain warrior perspective, it really allows you to say, I don't have capacity or tolerance for that situation today. And I'm going to put it in the parking lot until I do. And I'm doing that because it's good for my brain. It's not a recipe to cut people out of your life. For those of you who work with me, you know that I believe in relationships. I believe in repairing relationships. I don't believe in cutting people out of your life. But I do believe in order to become a brain warrior, we do need to be honest with those folks in our lives, and we all know who those may be, who do feel maybe a little intense when we're not at our best, who we feel drain us or who we feel, dampen our positivity. And it's important for all of us to be honest about those people or those situations. And so, Ian, I say this gently, but maybe, when it's just too much for you to consume, you might want to put some of that news that we're all hearing now about on hold for a while. And that doesn't mean you're abdicating your responsibility to the planet or to people that you love. It just means I'm going to become a brain warrior. I got to take care of my brain and my mind right now, give myself a break from that news and focus on things and stories and people and news items that actually nurture me and build me up and protect my brain. I don't know how that's landing with you. What do you think of that? Ian, any thoughts about that? Too tough?
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. There were people who couldn't watch a lot of different situations, global situations for a period of time and put it on hold. You happen to know me long term. You know the work I've done in the past and the work I do now. I often coupled the work I did with as a social worker, not to go through my CV, but I used to work with people who had criminal backgrounds and or really difficult behavior, because I had an ability to work with people who had challenging behaviors. Let me just put it that way. And I've given myself permission to no longer couple social work with criminality. I just don't do that work anymore. And I do that in part because I've become a brain warrior and I'm protecting what matters. I also used to provide service to women who had been victims of human sex trafficking, which is horrifically traumatizing. And I also put that one on. And why? Because I've become a brain warrior and I'm protecting what matters to me in my brain and in my mind. And so it's like accepting that there is a parameter to how much capacity do I have to be the helper I wish to be. And I do want to still work and I still do have passion, but I also want to also give room to take care of myself, right? So becoming a brain warrior is another way for those of us who are in service fields to remind ourselves that, it's okay to protect my brain and to protect my mind. And not only is it okay, I want that to be one of the things I do every day and in everything that I do. So we want to help you on number 5 to focus on your personal sense of meaning and purpose in life that inform your daily actions. Why do you do what you do? And who are you doing it for? And that sense of purpose, and I have a lot of people who come to me who generally are, 100% good people that I work with. I'm very privileged with very good people in my client group, and who often want to do more for others and take care of the planet, take care of the world, and create peace and do right and do good things. And again, those are laudable, wonderful, noble ideals and important things. I don't mean to say ideals like it's idealistic. I think it's all worth working for together. At the same time, recognizing my need to protect my own brain as a woman, protect my own brain and to protect my mind. So why do you do what you do? And if that is so important to you, becoming a brain warrior fits and aligns with it, because I'm only going to be able to do my best when my brain is functioning as well as I'm able to function. Noting that, again, some of us, we don't know when or how, may become ill, and those things are beyond our control. But while we have control to do things differently, why don't we? We want to create a commitment to brain-focused nutrition that supports your brain and mind. Now, one way that I kind of differ, there are several ways I differ with Dr. Amen. I'd rather say compliment versus differ. But I think part of this is a little bit culturally prescribed as well, because my heritage is Italian. And in that heritage, often the idea of nutrient-dense food came directly from closest to the earth, right? So where he would talk about supplements, and I agree with supplements like omega-3s. So all of you attending today really want to look at whether or not you're taking omega-3 with vitamin D supplements, because all of that's been proven to really affect brain function. A vitamin B, either a B complex or some sort of vitamin B, again, a conversation with your doctor or your naturopathic doctor in terms of those types of supplements, I support with him. Supplements beyond that, beyond a daily vitamin or an omega-3 with a vitamin D or a B vitamin, really is a conversation beyond my ability and beyond my scope of practice. But Dr. Amen does get into that. Another really good person that I've been listening to recently, she wrote a book called Spark. Her name is Dr. Molly Maloof. She also talks about biohacking, and she talks about taking a look at your own illness and your own condition and what you're feeling, and then hacking it with supplements. So there are people out there, if you're really into, I really want to calm my nervous system down and I feel deficient in certain areas, you can find other folks that do that kind of work. To me, that's a bit out of my scope of practice. And what I'd like to share with folks who tune into this, either tonight or later when I put it online, is that, you know what, you can also biohack or find nutrient-dense foods in your grocery store. And so point being, like, if you do further research on the power of protein that you get in fish or meat or plant-based protein, tofu, or if you take a look at your vegetable list and what are you eating that's straight from the earth. What we do know is that things like white sugar or high sugars, which is an epidemic in Canada and North America, a lot of our foods are just overly sweetened. And for people like me who do have a sensitive GI tract, like sugar is really an enemy for me right now. I can say that. And it causes all kinds of problems in my body. Dr. Amen would say it also causes problems in the brain because sugar drains the brain. And he has his spec evidence to show that. People eat sugar, the blood flow doesn't go to the brain. It goes to digest the sugar. Although in other resources, of course. I'm not anti-sugar. Sugar has also been proven to be good for the brain. What I'm saying is dig more deeply and take a good, honest look at your diet daily, every meal that you eat, and every bite that you take where possible. And again, I have bites of things that aren't necessarily nutrient dense, but where possible is what you're eating and what you're consuming 80 to 90% of your time proven to be good for your brain. If it's good for your heart, if it's good for your muscle groups, it's good for your brain. I say, let's do more of that, right? Because that's one of the ways we become a brain warrior. And it's within our control. Some people eat 3 meals a day, some don't. Some eat graze throughout the day, but when they graze on things like walnuts or, legumes or healthy snacks that we know, again, fuel the brain, fuel the heart, and fuel your muscle groups. So again, the alignment of sciences around here. When you're being a brain warrior, you're actually most likely taking care of your cardiovascular health as well. You also want to create a personalized, condition-specific wisdom for dealing with whatever you're dealing with, whether it's historical trauma, like for those of us who are mental health practitioners, we know that if you have personal trauma or if you've witnessed historic trauma yourself, when we see trauma that we're not directly connected with in the moments today or on the news, we can be hurting our brain. We can be re-traumatizing. When you look at the compassion fatigue literature and we look at burnout literature, the evidence shows that it is through somehow, we don't know exactly how, but it's through empathy that clinicians actually can hurt themselves. Because when you're empathizing with the story and the pain, and you feel people's pain, you may actually be hurting your brain and your mind. Again, another reason when you're a service provider to become a brain warrior and to protect your brain. And I mentioned Dr. Molly Maloof here as well, very interesting. She also started in Silicon Valley and was working with people who were creating technologies of different types and startups. And to me, it's quite fascinating, but not surprising, because a lot of the internet and what we use in terms of technology was initially based on the human brain, right? The whole idea of the central processor originally was the human brain. So we have borrowed a lot in software and in hardware from the human brain, but maybe we forgot how vulnerable the human brain really is. And so for people who've been working with individuals such as myself in technology, it's quite fascinating to me to meet people in that field without early histories of trauma, presenting with stress levels and condition that are consistent with those early histories of trauma. And I began to worry, what about what we're doing with technology is hurting the brain potentially and the mind? And I just say that softly. I want that to be out there because it has been a particular concern of mine. Some of you know who know me that years ago I worked at Markham Stouffville Hospital in Markham, and I was very privileged to work with Dr. Wendy Roberts, who at the time was opening up the child development clinic in the hospital where I was working, and she was the guru of autism at the time, during the time when we still used the diagnostic category of Asperger's and pervasive developmental disorders, for those of you who've been around longer like me. And she at the time was questioning, because again, autism, for those of you who are not aware, was first identified in parents who were highly educated, and many were engineers, and they were software engineers working in Silicon Valley. So again, there had early days been already a connection between autism and computers. And if you're old enough as I am to remember when secretaries wore the radioactive vests when they were in front of the monitors, because we just weren't sure if it was safe back in the day, it was a real thing. We were really worried about, what is this new machine and how is it going to hurt the human brain? I don't know if it has. What I can say though is there's more and more evidence that kids are on social media, even adults on social media. We do know more now about the dopamine impact on gaming and on things like, I won't name the products because I'm too small a company to be sued, but you know them as well as I do, to understand the really important ethical question around what are we doing to the human brain with all of this technology. Let's not forget where technology had its origins, which is in the human brain, which again is vulnerable. And so what are some of the daily brain health activities that you and I hopefully can still do that will help to improve mental agility? And one of those, according to a lot of different sources of research, would include engaging in activities like puzzles, reading, memory games to stimulate cognitive functions. For people over the age of 55 and for people who have retired, fully retired, the recommendation is that you engage in at least 15 minutes of learning something new every day. So a novel topic, something you don't really know anything about, not just necessarily doing a Google search. I'm going to say something completely retroactive and possibly radical. Why not reactivate your library card and go to a library and borrow a book on a topic that's really new to you or interesting that you just want to kind of dive into a bit more? And we know that not only does reading help to keep the learning center active and will encourage that part of your brain to be healthy and agile, but it also helps us to focus. It helps us to emotionally regulate. For those of us who are clinicians, we know the power of reading and writing, but we're sticking with reading right now. And I'm talking like following along, reading in sequence and reading in depthly. People who have depression often share that they have trouble reading. They can't read a paragraph. They're too distracted. They can't focus. That can't focus is a part of dysregulation, right? And so just by the very act of engaging in some reading, something new and novel every day and learning something new every day will help to keep that part of the brain healthy and active. An automatic negative thought, or an IT, in short, is something that most of us who have either struggled with depression or work with people who have formal diagnoses of depression will know is part of feeling unhappy and blue. That we will have these automatic negative thoughts. We don't feel like we're in control of them. They can often feel intrusive and they just kind of float in. And they're automatic. They happen in the brain. And guess what? They're connected to a chemical process in the brain. An ant, again, is connected to a chemical process in the brain. When we learn how to manage ants or reduce them or eradicate them completely, which, by the way, we can do with CBT and other very powerful interventions, we can actually improve, again, our mental agility and our mental health and wellness, our mental flexibility. Physical activity is another one because regular exercise increases blood flow to the brain, and blood flow to the brain and to any organ is essential for its health. It just means we have fresh oxygen. The brain is always oxygenated. When you watch some of these shows on TV on, longevity and keeping the body alive for many years, they go into these oxygen tanks, right? Or these ice tanks. And the reason we're talking about that is it kind of aligns gently or a little bit with the idea of blood flow actually helps the brain. And so I'm not necessarily asking you to get an oxygen tank. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm suggesting that when we have regular exercise, cardio exercise in particular, so that we're getting our heart rate up at least for 40 minutes a day to a moderate level, we'll get an increase of oxygen through our body. And that's always forever a good thing for the body and something we can actually do every day. So back in the day when we said, take the stairs instead of the elevator, or, go for a walk instead of jumping on the subway for a couple of stops, that is still true today. Brain health lifestyle habits, again, include things like a balanced diet, adequate sleep, So again, Caroline, you don't mind, I hope, my sharing, because you shared with me, if you're still on the call, that, trying to get a good night's sleep is important. It's not only important, it's how we become a brain warrior. So I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the notion of a sleep hygiene program. Have you heard of sleep hygiene?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So there are specialists who help people with, again, identifying very, very personalized, because there is no one size fits all for everyone when it comes to wellness. But a good wellness coach and a good mental health practitioner will let you know whether it's a nutritional health coach or a mental health coach or whatever kind of health coach you're working for will really work with you, because you know your body best, and will work with you to personalize and design, what do I need to do before I even get to falling asleep, right? So taking a look at a program with which you can habituate yourself so that you can actually, it becomes a habit for you, right? Brushing your teeth, dimming the lights, putting on your comfy pajamas, going into a warm room, your bedroom under a warm blanket, having a bed, kind of like getting a routine in place. And again, I'm making it very simple for today's presentation, but the idea being that you want to biohack that. You want to take a look at your problem with sleeping and when it happens and why it happens, and try and manage those aspects of your routine that are within your power to change or do differently until you get it to a point where it's effective. Because sleep is really important when we become a brain warrior. We know that all of our organs actually recover when we sleep. Sleep is critical to brain function and to mental health and wellness as well. We want to also do our best to prevent cognitive decline. And I say that gently because many people will experience it with aging, but apparently, according to some areas of science, it's not true for everyone as they age. Not everyone as they age have a decline in cognition. They just do things differently. Interesting to remember that. And what is the difference that will be important for you? So if you're starting to see that your memory is challenged for certain things, what do you need to be more mindful of? I actually made a banana bread with my grandkids, and I forgot to, because we were so busy and there was so much going on, I forgot to add the flour. Have you ever made a banana bread without flour? It just flattens at the end, right? It doesn't rise, it flattens, and it was like all goopy and sugary. I can laugh at it today, but it was a really, again, a red flag or a reminder that now I have to be very mindful of the ingredients and develop a new way, a new habit of ensuring that I've added the appropriate ingredient. I didn't have to do that before, but I have to do it now. And I'm okay with that. It's not necessarily cognitive decline. Maybe it is. I'm not a psychologist. What I would say is it's something I feel I need to adapt to. And I don't want to stop baking. I certainly don't want to stop baking with my grandkids. And it's a healthy activity that fits with becoming and protecting what matters, which is all of those things: relationship, healthy eating, engaging in activities that bring me joy. So in baking the banana bread with people you love can become part of being a brain warrior. A brain healthy diet is nutrient dense. What does that mean? It's really not that tough. It's essentially prioritizing green leafy veggies, nuts, berries, beans, whole grains, fish, and olive oil. Some people would say, myself included, as someone whose family originated from Italy, we would call it like the Mediterranean diet, but it does seem to hold true in most science, that the Mediterranean diet is most effective for brain health, longevity. When you look at the blue zones, information where people live the longest around the world, they're eating those staple foods on a daily basis. And Dr. Amen calls a clean food. What does he mean by a clean food? It's essentially reduced sugars, sodium, and fried foods that he says drains your brain. Does that mean you never have it? Someone as committed as Dr. Amin would say never, never have any alcohol. Someone like me would say, becoming a brain warrior, in my opinion, in the mind model, means we have some room to include things like a little bit of red wine, or if you want to have that fried food, you have the fried food because it might help you just to feel good. And so you want to be able to experience things for yourself that makes best sense for you. But in a very committed person to the brain warrior approach, you really wouldn't be drinking any alcohol or using any kind of substance that may in fact harm the brain. He also talks about lowering amounts of red meat over the long term, essentially being better for the brain as well. So you can see when you look at what are the daily activities that help the brain, when you look at mental health, mental exercises, physical activity, and brain health lifestyle habits around diet and exercise, and diet specifically, it does align with the same kinds of things that we learn about taking care of the heart and your muscle groups as well, in terms of longevity and being healthy over the long term. So how well is your brain? That's a question I believe all of you are probably interested in. I think we lost Ian, but hopefully I can send him an email later. So this is the brainhealthassessment.com. So please feel free to copy it from the slide. I don't know if you can do that, or just jot it down and take the time to complete it. You'll actually get a number. I don't get a kickback. I'm not in any way connected to the men's clinic in the States. I just think it was a really, whenever you find a free resource, it's amazing to use it. It's another tool to add to your kit. It's another resource to share with the people you work with. And it was pretty helpful to take a look at his assessment of your brain, and he'll actually give you a number the way we started with today on how well he thinks your brain is based on those answers. Okay, so take time to do that, and if you feel when you get it that you're a little worried about that. Did I stop sharing? Because that's what I wanted to do.
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. So I open it up now to any kind of questions, because I feel like I talked long and fast.
I have a question about when you were talking about the increase in ASD and
Yeah.
Alzheimer's to triple, all that. Those are all Canadian stats?
I think most of those I actually got from the Amen stats, the Dr. Amen stats. So he's American, he's from Washington. But you can take a look at the numbers again, that those are probably not that difficult to find. Are you feeling they sound high?
Um, no, I know that I know that Alzheimer's is going to be quite higher because of the rise in our older adult population. So I know those factors. But um, I heard again, where did I read it? I didn't hear it. I read it
Okay.
somewhere that the actual number of Alzheimer cases are decreasing while the numbers are increasing because of the number of older adults we have over 80.
Oh, okay. I think I know where you're going.
Per
Yes.
capita, the numbers are decreasing in that sense, right?
Yes.
Simply because we know a little bit more about Alzheimer's and some of the things we can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just
That's a really nuanced point that I'm not 100% aware of. So I mean, I could refer you to the Bayview Center. You probably know them. They're one of the leading experts in that whole area of dementia and Alzheimer's here in Toronto. They're quite excellent. So you might want to, do a little more research on that yourself. What I can tell you just professionally, I mean, personally, is in my own world here, I just see a rise in people with Parkinson's and ALS and Lewy body disorder that I didn't hear about even in my mother's generation.
yeah, no, it's very. Are we hearing more about it? Is it because we're hearing the numbers and we didn't really hear the numbers before? Is it that people are died with different diagnoses in the past? But you're right. It's scary because it's touching each family so much more. right?
100%. Yes, it really is. And so that's why I think where we can, and that my passion has moved from, because I have different passions over different decades. But now at a certain age, I think, and even as young people, and I know there's people on the call who are young, and I appreciate you staying this whole time, is start young, start paying attention. Like if you're someone who's young and have prone to anxiety or depression or fluctuations in mood or dysregulation, it's really important to start young and to remember, well, what can I do to protect my brain and protect my mind, right? And to think about your health habits as more than, fitting into a certain size of clothing.
Absolutely.
That's not the purpose. Or, you know, whatever the other agendas might be around healthy habits or going to the gym. I mean, there's a different reason now. There's a motivation behind it. When we learn that engaging in talk-based therapy or counseling actually helps me to create new neural pathways, how powerful is
Yeah. Yep. You've got to get people to buy into it. Unfortunately, um, people will think, I hear in my world sometimes, well, I heard that if you go to counseling, you got to go through all this. They don't want to go through um, the process of it because you have to sort of relive
that?
things.
Oh, rehash.
That's
Yes.
right.
Well,
Why
it
re-go?
de-
Yeah.
right, and it depends on the type of therapist you find. So, and I will say that we're all different. Those of us that are out there, oh, that although those of us that are out there will have different approaches to how we do therapy and what we talk about. But I would say in response to that, it's well worth that deep dive into
Gosh,
yourself,
yes.
deep dive into your mind, and to find someone that you feel you can trust to talk to, because nothing really is off limits in terms of what you can share with people, and to really begin to look at old problems in new ways, because not only does it improve your mood so you can enjoy life better, you're no longer burdened by an old problem, but boy, you've actually changed your brain. How
Yeah.
powerful is that?
And I think it's important for that message, your message, to hit
Thank
young
you.
people, because all your trauma comes from your childhood. And if you don't have an outlet or understand why your brain is thinking and acting the way it is, because it's based on things that you don't know how to process. The earlier you can process that, as you're in your late 20s, when you're sort of, instead of waiting until you're 50 or 60 to look back and go, oh, that's what happened.
Yes. And I'll say that gently though, because there are some people, as I shared, who like trauma doesn't just happen in childhood.
No,
That's not fair to say.
absolutely not. What I
Yeah,
mean,
there are some people like even
but
EMS providers,
no,
ambulance
no, no,
drivers, police,
absolutely,
you
absolutely.
know.
But I think with because a lot of it's things that happen to you as a child that you don't know how to process because you simply don't have the tools. The earlier in our lives we realize that,
Yes, the better,
better,
the
instead of
better.
waiting until we're in our 50s and 60s and go, oh,
And or living out your trauma for years and then
right,
passing your trauma down to your children, which is how intergenerational trauma happens. It
right.
happens because we pass it down to our kids without processing our own and learning to manage and heal it and reclaim who we were, kind of a privileged concept, before the trauma. Because some people would say, well, there was never a need before the trauma. I've just been so traumatized. So that's a whole other political conversation, right, Caroline? But point well taken. Yes, I do think even with young people who are experiencing, soft or early signs of anxiety or depression because they're on social media, where parents can get them connected to a good therapist, I strongly recommend it.
Yeah. Well, and again, I always go back to, well, not everybody can afford a private therapist, and they are few and far between that are OHIP covered. I've been on that wait list for my kids, for myself,
I know.
for something that important, preventative, right? Give these kids at least coverage so that they can, not just kids, but anybody, right? Why not mental health coverage? If my
But what I can tell you is a good therapist will have a sliding scale, as I do when they're private. What you do get in private is different, by the way, than what you can get publicly, although there are excellent public therapy therapists as well available through hospitals and other centers, usually time limited, however.
Yes.
And a lot of the work that maybe people need could be longer term. But I will say on a regular basis, try not to let finances get in the way of getting better where possible. It's really worth investment. My clients are convinced, so
Yeah.
they're still with me, and I'm very lucky.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's
Thank
wonderful.
you for joining me this evening, Caroline. I really appreciate it and your participation. You don't mind my sharing this
Not
on
at all.
LinkedIn or on my YouTube channel? Good. If I can figure out where my recording goes, that's what my plan is. But that's my plan because again, I'm pretty fluent in technology, but I'm not a master of all of it. And boy, has there been a lot to learn. That's the other thing I think for people who've been around so long is to kind of give yourself the grace or the space or whatever word you want to use to say, I have learned a whole new language.
Oh, are you kidding me? Sometimes
Wow.
I solve IT issues and
Yeah.
I'm thinking, me
Yeah.
have a
Like
computer
we used to have people who wrote on the
2009.
there it is, right? So we've learned a whole new language and we really have bent and contorted the brain and the mind to adapt accordingly. So if there's hope for someone like us, there's hope for all. So thank you for spending your hour and a bit with me. I appreciate it. All the best. Stay in touch. If you want to find me, I'm lakesidewellnesstherapy@gmail.com.
Yep, I got your information here from your
Okay,
site.
great.
So
Great.
all right.
All the best. Be well. Thank you, folks. Bye for now. Be well. Be a brain warrior.